This podcast is supported by Area 9 Lyceum. Cut training time in half, create higher proficiency, leave no learner behind and improve business outcomes with Area 9's AI-driven adaptive learning technology. The platform Area 9 Rhapsode is grounded in scientific research, serving more than 30 million learners across hundreds of subject areas, gathering billions of data points. Whether your focus is K-12, post-secondary, vocational training, graduate school professional development or lifelong learning, experience adaptive learning for yourself at area9lyceum.com/learninghack. That's area9lyceum.com/learninghack.
Welcome to Hacking Ukraine, a Learning Hack special. Over 3 episodes, we tell the story of what happened when John Helmer hitched a ride with Andy Wooler, chair of Ukraine Fundraiser 2022, to help deliver humanitarian aid to recently bombed Lviv. Episode 3, Coming Home.
Previously on Hack in Ukraine. Our 2,500-mile road trip to Ukraine began in Uckfield, UK, where Andy Wooler had a band practice. From there we crossed the channel to Dunkirk, motoring non-stop through France, Belgium, Netherlands, Germany, Poland, and finally to Lviv in Ukraine. With a military hospital there, we delivered our payload, took a brief look around the city, then headed back the way we had come. Having spent most of the night getting through the border, we're now in Poland. After a short nap and a nourishing breakfast of Egg McMuffin, we forge onward. I've never been to Poland, and it was dark when we passed through on the way out, so I get to see some of it on the light for the first time, as much as you can see from the motorway. What I see, apart from container lorries, is forest and lakes and several motorcycle gangs, including a chapter of Hells Angels, on their way at a guess to the Car Patch custom bike show held in southwestern Poland, close to the Czech border. Well, it's not a sightseeing trip. What it is, I'm beginning to realise, is a test of endurance. Less for me than for Andy, who's doing all the driving. But in this next clip, recorded somewhere near Kassel in Germany, you can hear that barrelling non-stop there and back with minimal breaks for naps in the van is beginning to take a toll on both of us.
Okay, so it's 10:30 on... I can't know what day it is. Can you, Andy?
I believe it
Friday.
might be Friday. Yes.
Friday. Yeah, I think, fuck, it's Friday. Yeah, 10:30 Friday. We're on the way back. We're just outside Kassel. Probably a bit less further on than we'd hoped. Aiming to get an 8 o'clock ferry now from Dunkirk to Dover, and then we'll be home tomorrow, which will be great. But I'm absolutely knackered. I mean, we haven't had any real sleep to speak of since when did we come? Monday, Tuesday?
Tuesday evening we left.
Yeah, we've had naps, and I think the longest we had is what, 4 hours?
Yeah, we had 4 hours. That delightful 4 hours when I managed to inflate the bed in the back of the van.
Yeah,
which was nice.
But all in the van. No hotels were got anywhere near during this. So I feel absolutely on the floor, and all I've done is sit in the van. But you've been driving, Andy, and I could tell you're pretty shattered. How do you feel, man?
Yeah, shattered is probably a very good way to describe it. It's yeah, I'm absolutely broken, I think, probably. Nothing that a sleep won't put right, but we have pushed the limits on this one in terms of how far we've driven on how little sleep. And that was a choice. That was a choice to come without a second driver, because that's the difference when I have to do it all myself. It's a bit brutal, and I'm fully aware of that. But on the way back, of course, we can take it easy. I find, interestingly, power naps very helpful, and I had a 15-minute one earlier, if you recall, and felt incredibly refreshed. for about 10 minutes after we woke up. Well, for a short while, and that's kept me going. But so the power of the afternoon nap, is I know has been spoken about recently on LinkedIn about let your co-workers go and have a 40 winks in the afternoon.
But if you're just having naps and no proper, it takes a toll, doesn't it? Why do you do this to yourself, Andy?
I do it because when you meet the people and you see how grateful they are for the help that's being given to them. And when we were in the Lviv this morning, you saw for yourself the guy in the wheelchair.
Was that this morning?
Yes, it wasn't. Was it?
You're joking.
I'm not sure. It might have been this morning, yeah. Yes, it was.
Yeah, we were still in customs this morning, weren't we? Getting out.
Oh, maybe it was yesterday. Sorry, it was yesterday, yes. Sorry, we've also been totally proving the work of Mr. Ebbinghaus during the course of the last 3 days. But you saw for yourself there was a guy came by the side of the van in a wheelchair with no legs, and yet 100 yards from him were the 2 electric wheelchairs we had just delivered. So a very direct relationship between what we've taken out there and where it's going to be used, and there's nothing better. And the people who donate the aid to us as well have been incredibly kind in their comments on Facebook during the course of the day. One of them called me a superhero. I'm not. All we do is we are a logistics element of an end-to-end process. It involves many different players, all of whom play their parts. Sadly, from my perspective, the only one who's not in better sleep out of all those players is me, at the moment. But that's the way it is. I've come into this knowing that's. But the fact that we've got 2 67-year-old gentlemen doing this run in a short space of time, some people would say it's bloody ludicrous that we've actually done it. But, if we don't do it, does it get done?
Yeah.
And there's lots of small teams like ours that go out there doing things. I think you've seen a few of their vehicles when we were driving around Lviv today and so on. And it's not just about the aid, because we had this conversation earlier where you said, well, why don't you just ship it by air freight? Well, apart from the cost, the logistics of getting it from the airport into the country remain. But the real big thing is that this is a huge morale boost for the people as well, to see the piece of care. I don't know whether you spotted, but earlier on today we were overtaken by a red van with Ukrainian plates on twice. He must have stopped and then overtaken us again. And he put his 4-way flashes on as a sort of thank you as he went past the van.
Yeah, he's probably asleep at that point.
And that's not unusual, that happens quite a lot because they really do appreciate it.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it worthwhile, the look on the kids' faces at last Christmas when they were opening Christmas presents in Kiev, some of which had been on our van the day before.
Yeah.
That makes it really worthwhile. The lady who looks after disabled children, always gives me an enormous hug when I see her there. As a thank you for, what she needs to help look after these poor kids.
Yeah.
That's the benefit of all of this, and I don't ask or expect anything more than that, to be honest.
Yeah. It has to be sustainable. You've got to look after yourself. So, I can totally see the logic, having seen the operation now, most of the way through, how important it is to keep the costs down. And that involves a certain amount of privations to the people who are actually doing it. But if you drive yourself into the ground.
It's one of the reasons we only go once a month, not twice.
Yeah.
You've seen that just now when I was checking out the ferries back, because we can never book the home ferry before we leave because we just don't know. We could have caught a ferry at 6 o'clock if we can make it there for 6, but it was £70 more. The reality is we're now on an 8 o'clock ferry. If we happen to be there at 5:45, my guess is the FDS will shove us on there.
Yeah.
And we've saved £70.
So you know what this is leading to, folks? You know what the answer is to this conundrum, to Andy knocking himself out to make this happen. Give us the fucking money.
That's very adjacent to Bob Geldorf.
That was pretty good, actually.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. It wasn't
the fucking money.
Yeah.
I've moved it there. I think I've gone a bit.
It is incredibly important
Got a
because
bit Paul McVaney there.
because everything we do is self-funded. Nobody's paid in our organisation, in common with a lot of similar NGOs. If we haven't got the money to put the diesel in the tank, then we'll end up doing it. And I know Mike has put a lot of money in since last March, as I have done since I joined in December. You know, little things like the van we're in. I paid for that. That's my van. I covered the cost of getting it roadworthy. I've insured it for the first year, taxed it, and all the rest of it. If I hadn't have done that, we would still be running with one van. But you know, I've done that willingly and gladly to do that. But that's just an example of where you know, everything we do has to be funded by somebody, and if the public don't do it, we'll end up doing it ourselves, and that's a rocky road for some of the members of the team who don't have the benefit of a salary at the level perhaps that I do currently, although I'm reducing my hours. And the day will come when I'm fully retired, I'll be equally as stingy about these things. But
So every bit of money that you donate comes in, and of course we're very grateful for all the donations that have come in during the time we've been posting on Facebook and so on, and hopefully those will continue to come in as I start to release the podcast.
oh, absolutely. Thank you to all of those listening who have donated, and to all of you who are just about to. I know you are. You know you are. Just need to get round to doing it. Really huge, heartfelt thanks from us on behalf of the Ukrainian people. And a big thanks to John for the exposure to our work that this journey has enabled. As you will discover when you listen to the eventual podcast, this isn't just about taking aid to Ukraine. We've had lots of other very insightful and interesting conversations that relate to our shared day job interests.
Yeah.
But the byproduct for me is that this has enabled us both to expose to a very wide audience exactly what goes on in an organisation like ours. And I know from talking to John out without the tape recorder on, but this has been an eye-opener in terms of, you know, and this is just a quick in and out trip. You know, you can imagine if we go to Kyiv and we go down from there to Zaporizhzhia, which or somewhere like that, and we're planning to do something like on those lines in September. You multiply all of what you've seen by a huge magnitude, and I think you really have a much better understanding of that now. And even just a quick in and out, we're dead, the pair of us. You know, when this tape goes off, we're going to be putting the van in the car park. I'm going on the airbed in the back, which we couldn't do on the way out because, of course, the van's full of aid.
Yeah.
And John wins the front seat.
Yeah. I think it's time to do that, to get your head down, prepare for the last leg. So, close out there. Thanks, Andy.
Absolutely.
Since Ukraine Fundraiser 2022 formed at the start of the Russian invasion, the organisation has made more than 18 runs to Kyiv, the Donetsk region, Zaporizhzhia, Lviv, Dnipro and other destinations, targeting aid to those who need it most. Times may be difficult at home, but in Ukraine there are people whose lives have been totally destroyed. This effort relies on your donations, so please give what you can, no matter how small, on the Just Giving page at this link. Every penny you give will go to helping sufferers from this cruel conflict rebuild their lives.
The link for your donations is justgiving.com/crowdfunding/Ukraine Fundraiser 2022. That's justgiving.com/crowdfunding/Ukraine patreon.com/crowdfunding/Ukraine Fundraiser 2022. One thing I've learned in this journey back and forth across the continent of Europe, looking up theorists associated with the places we pass, is just how much they all moved around, often through necessities of war or religious and racial persecution. When they travelled, they took their ideas with them, forming networks of knowledge and relationships that add up to a global community of scholarship. None more so than John Comenius, born in what is now the Czech Republic. For much of his career, he zigzagged around between Poland, Sweden, England, Hungary and the Netherlands, where he finally died.
John Amos Comenius, 1592 to 1670, was a Czech philosopher, pedagogue and theologian who is considered the father of modern education. He served as the last bishop of the Unity of the Brethren before becoming a religious refugee and one of the earliest champions of universal education, a concept eventually set forth in his book Didactica Magna. As an educator and theologian, he led schools and advised governments across Protestant Europe through the middle of the 17th century.
I really love Comenius for the following reasons. He brings all this together. This is a guy who was hounded across Europe because, of course, in the post-Reformation figure that Europe was on fire. War was everywhere. The defenestration in Prague, 30 Years' War and so on. But he's this real bridge between the Reformation and the Enlightenment for me. A lover of the scientific revolution. And he brings in a very interesting, I think this really is almost Erasmus-like, a thing called pan-sophism. The idea of universal wisdom, a universal syllabus for everyone on the planet, rich or poor. So what is this unified? It's very particular, it's a unified system of education, but also a unified curriculum.
While people like Comenius have worked to unify and bring communities together through knowledge, others persist in trying to tear them apart. The crisis in Ukraine, apart from providing supply-side shocks for the global economy, has also impacted European learn-tech firms, many of which have come to rely on satellite units of workers in Eastern Europe and Russia, typically employed as developers or in IT. Many of these individuals have had to relocate or have lost their jobs. For some, the impact has been greater. I was honoured to speak to one such professional, a Ukrainian national now relocated to Germany. She contacted me following the release of the first podcast in this series and told me her story. It's a sad one. Kate Fitzgerald, head of FACT. Tell us a bit about her.
Hack Facts.
Yuliia Kovach is e-learning specialist at the Fraunhofer Institute for Applied Information Technology near Bonn in Germany. An experienced English teacher with a background in the professional training and coaching industry, she was born and grew up in Luhansk, Ukraine. When Luhansk was occupied in 2014, she and her family had just moved to the city of Ivano-Frankivsk in the west of Ukraine, where she met her husband Viktor. Having done his year's national service fighting in the Donbass, Viktor was recalled on full-scale invasion by Russia in 2022 and sadly died in the fierce fighting around Bahmut.
So, Yuliia Kovach, it's great to have you on the podcast. Welcome to The Learning Hack.
Hi everyone, thank you for having me here today.
Oh, you're welcome. First of all, can you tell us where you are right now and what the situation's like there, what the weather's like and so on?
Well, at the moment I live in Germany, in Bonn, and with my two dogs. And it's pretty calm here. I have been here for over a year now. I'm getting used to it.
Yeah. So you work at the Fraunhofer Research Institute of Applied Information Technology. Am I pronouncing that right? As an e-learning specialist, and obviously this is a learning podcast. Can you tell us a bit about the organization and your role there?
Yeah, sure. So the Fraunhofer Gesellschaft, it's like the organization of many institutes, over 70, as I know, and they're all research institutes, and I work for one of those. which is called Fraunhofer Kids. And I've been there for around a year now. And as an e-learning specialist, my task is to compose online courses for people to book and to study in cooperation with the subject matter experts. So basically, people doing research and developing things, and when they're ready to share it with the public, then we come in and work together and compose those courses, and then people are able to book them. And the subject matter experts, they also provide some guidance during the courses, right? So they have Q&A sessions with the participants and so on. And the course that I'm working on right now, why basically I was hired, that's also part of the Help Ukraine program. They thought that a lot of people would come to Europe or EU countries, and they would need a job, of course. And IT and technologies are pretty good developed in Ukraine, but nevertheless, they would need like a starting point or some kind of guidance into the job market. So this project is for those people, for data scientists or data managers that would want to get a job in Europe, right? And on the other hand, is for the companies. This is the idea that we came up with, is like the sponsoring concept, where the companies could sponsor a participant or a few places in this course, and then they would just get the working force prepared potentially for their company working.
Okay, so to backtrack, you were born and raised in Luhansk, in the far east of Ukraine, in the Donbass region. People in the UK and in the US will have heard these names, and we know what happened there in 2014, and more people will know about the full-scale invasion. But tell us first of all, what was it like growing up in Luhansk?
It's an interesting question, because now when I look back, it's a bit different, because when you grew up, you are growing up somewhere, you just don't compare places, right? And it was just a typical, I guess, region of Ukraine. This was post-Soviet times. The 90s, they were not easy, I guess, for all the cities, or maybe even for all the countries, post-Soviet countries, right? But still, like, we get the opportunities to study, and I'm really thankful for that, because the education I got, the pedagogical education, it was the Lugansk National University, and back then it was 2004 when I entered the university, and it was like in the top 5 universities of Ukraine, and so it was a pretty good ranked university.
And that's why your English is so good, because you trained as an English teacher. Yeah.
Yes, it was also part of the training. So basically, it's like pedagogical university and psychological department, and the elementary school teacher, and part of that was also English language teacher.
And I mean, you speak English very well. What was your first language? Was it Ukrainian or Russian? Because you are right on the border with Russia there.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Well, we spoke Russian, and most of people spoke Russian in the city. But I never thought of Russian as my mother tongue somehow. So I always knew Ukrainian, and I always learned it at school, and everyone learned it at school as a second language. But if anyone would ask me what is your language, I would say Ukrainian, even though I spoke Russian mostly at that time.
Yeah, how many languages do you speak altogether?
Well, I speak Russian. I don't speak it anymore. I cut it out of the knowledge. But I used to speak it, then Ukrainian, English, and German. And
Right.
I'm starting to learn Turkish. It's just fun.
Just for fun, yeah.
Just for
Which
fun.
language?
Yes.
Which language do you think in?
Oh, it depends. Actually, it's all the time different languages because since I'm here in Germany, I hear so much German that sometimes or like every day is three language for me. It's every day Ukrainian, English, and German anyway, because the course, the work I'm doing is in English. And the colleagues I'm talking to is in German. And well, if I communicate with my friends or family, it's Ukrainian. So it's every time, every day, it's three language environment. So
Yeah.
to say, so it's basically, in the evening, I sometimes don't know exactly which language I'm thinking in.
I mean, this is always an astonishing thing for British people because we don't tend not to speak any other languages. I've got a bit of schoolboy French and some absolutely antiquated schoolboy German, but not very much. And then when I came to Ukraine, it's you see people who were using three languages all the time, and do that head switch between them. It's really interesting. So can you explain the circumstances under which you moved from Luhansk to the west of Ukraine? Was that to do with sort of what was going on with the political situation, and when exactly did it happen?
Not really, because it happened earlier, a few years earlier, before the invasion or the war started. It was in 2007, and
and it was 2014 for listeners who don't know so much about it. It's 2014 when Russian incursions first started happening into that area of Ukraine. Yeah. So you'd gone before then. What was the reason for moving?
It's a pretty good question because I never know how to explain that. That's maybe luck or gut feeling. I really don't know because nothing special happened or there was not like a particular reason for that. But at that point, my family, they originated in the family comes from the Western Ukraine, and they just moved around a lot during the Soviet times because they kind of couldn't quit your job freely or choose where to work or where to live. Basically, you had to send a request to the authorities and say, I want to quit my job and I want to do this and this. And they would offer you a position, and it could be anywhere in the country or even another Soviet country. So, for example, my grandparents, they lived in Kazakhstan for a year and then they came back because they just wanted to go back to Ukraine.
Okay,
so they just moved around.
That was in the Soviet era where you didn't have that much choice. And then when the wall came down, gradually you began to have more freedom of movement. So the family decided to move somewhere else, yeah?
Yeah, exactly.
So you settled in Ivano-Frankivsk. I hope I'm saying that correctly.
It's a long name, Ivano-Frankivsk. Exactly.
Yeah, which is not so far from Lviv, where I was. Although when I say that, it's like 100 miles or whatever to the south. And you married Viktor. But on your first anniversary in 2014, when the Russian incursion started, he went to fight in Donetsk. How did that come about? Did he enlist, or was he called up, or did he have a military background?
Yes. He was called up, and he had to go.
Yeah.
Well, basically, in Ukraine, you have this obligation as a man. When you turn 18, you should go to the army, right, and do the service for 1 year. Yeah. And he did that when he was 20 or 21. So basically, he had a little experience, like he was trained for that. But then again, like not everyone gets called up when something actually happens, right? So he received this note and he had to go, and he was trained for a few months maybe, and then yes, he was sent to Donbas region.
And what were your feelings about that at the time? Must have been a very nervous time.
It was really hard, and I don't know. I even don't know how I lived through that, because I would live just from call to call or from message to message, because usually the connection is really poor, and you could not just call whenever you want. So basically, he could just send one message per day, sometimes at night, at late night, or early morning. Or he could call and we just talked for a few minutes, and it would just be interrupted, and I would just wait for another call.
Okay. So then after his military service was up, after 13 months, he was back, and the two of you settled into civilian life for a while. So how was your career as a learning professional progressing at this time, or where were you in your career?
Yeah, I was working for an online platform, which was providing English lessons, one-on-one with tutors, and it was pretty innovative at that time. It was like 2015 maybe, or 16. And this platform, they had like the lessons, integrated home task that would be checked automatically, which was pretty cool and saved a lot of time for the teachers, I guess. So my job was to explain how this works, to just guide the new teachers into this platform and the knowledge of this school and so on, and also like search for new teachers inside and outside Ukraine, because it was really cool experience also because of all the native speakers that I got to meet through this job, and just a lot of people from different places. Really cool.
Yeah. And Viktor was working as a designer, is that right? Is he involved in learning, or?
He was learning it. Yes, exactly. He wanted to become a 3D Max designer.
Yeah.
And so he was taking also like one-on-one lessons with the teacher, and he was designing like a house with all the details and everything. It was like pretty cool project, and he enjoyed it a lot, learning this stuff, because I guess it was like his dream to be able to project stuff like that.
So you were making a life together. Now we come to the part of the interview that I understand might be difficult for you. It's quite difficult for me to ask the questions, but life changed completely, I'm guessing, with the full-scale Russian invasion in February 2022. Can you tell us what happened next?
Yes, that day he was going to fly to visit his sister, and early in the morning, around 5 a.m., he got the message that his flight was cancelled. And at that time, we just knew that the war started. And he just said, I need to get my things and prepare myself to go back to the army. So, and during these first hours, we heard explosions, and our airport was bombed the very first day. It was really scary. So he got his things, and he got to this military district, and they said that he has time till tomorrow. So they gave him 1 day to prepare, and the next day, the 25th, early in the morning, he should be there with all his stuff prepared. It's kind of also extraordinary for me, because the 26th was his birthday, and we were planning stuff, right? So we were inviting friends to come over and so on, and then he was back in the army just like that. So he was gone, and I stayed alone at home, and with my 2 dogs and the cat. and it got really scary really fast because I was so confused. I didn't know what to do in this new situation, this life situation. And all these air alarms, they got, just few times a day and night, and you just don't know what to expect when you hear the sound, because you understand that probably, or not, like anything can be bombed anytime, and and so I would just take the animals and all the survival backpack and everything and go down the 10th floor. You take the steps because you're not allowed to take elevator during this time, and you would just go to the basement and wait, and sometimes it were like a few hours that you stay there, and then they would just say, okay, it's safe to go home, and then you would go back, and then a few hours later again and again, and so it was really, really difficult, and in combination with my fears and thoughts for my husband, because he was directed somewhere at the front line, and again the connection was really poor, and there were days that I didn't get any messages, and he said that after the first week probably, when he was there fighting, and he said, it's much more difficult and scary than it used to be back then in Donbass because of the planes.
Sorry to interrupt. And he was the place where he was in Bahmut, is that right?
Yeah. Well, he was in different places, actually. Yeah, he was first sent to Kiev, and then when in Kiev the situation changed, then they were redirected, and the last few months he spent in Bahmut region, and then in November he died. Yeah.
Let's take a moment. That's fine.
It's been 9 months, but still when I talk about this,
I can imagine. Well, I can't imagine, but how did you hear the news? Was it a phone call or a...
yes, I was here in Germany, and just a number called and started asking me some questions about my husband, or did I have anyone in the army, or what was his name and my home address and stuff like that. And I couldn't understand why they were asking those things. And I said, what happened? What do you want? Who is this? And they just said that usually we don't want to tell such news on the phone, but since you're abroad and there is no one at home at our apartment that we can contact, and as his wife I'm like the first contact, of course, then they say that you should come home. And I asked why and what happened, and they say because your husband died. Dead in a battle.
Very sorry for your loss. People will be very moved to hear that and about the sacrifice you made. And I thought it was quite a moving message you sent me before the interview. I just said you really want to do this, and you said you wanted people to know exactly what the sacrifices that are being made for Ukraine are. And I think very grateful to you that you will speak to us and give us some idea of that.
Thank you for letting me speak about that, because as I came here to Europe, also like in Ukraine, people who have no connection to the army or they have no relatives in the army, they have a hard time to imagine what it's like. And people ask me questions like, why did you let him go? But basically, it was not my decision. And when someone attacks you, you should protect yourself, right? And someone should do it, and he felt that he's the one who should do it. So I could only support him in this decision. Of course, he didn't want to die. And he didn't want me to die. He didn't want any of Ukrainians to die. That's why he made this decision to go and protect everyone he could. So it's a really tough decision. And as you said, we lived through this experience once back in 2014, and that gave me some kind of hope, or I don't know, that everything is going to be okay and he will come back again. But yeah, you cannot control that.
So how do you deal with this on a day-to-day basis?
It's just trying to survive every day and trying to do something. People around me are very supportive, and this is, I guess, what is helping me the most. Talking to people, telling the story, or just getting support from my colleagues and my friends at home, my family. Because another question that people usually ask is, what can I do to help you? But nothing you can do, basically. It's just be there and listen when someone wants to talk about such a story.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to listen to.
Yeah. So, to the extent that you can focus now on your working life, is it one of those things where work is a useful distraction, or is it just that much tougher to kind of concentrate on it?
It's kind of both. It's difficult to explain, but when I think about work, I think, okay, I have these tasks that I need to do, and I don't feel like I have the energy for it,
Yeah.
And everything seems so unimportant at the moment. But on the other hand, when I sit down and try to concentrate and accomplish some of the tasks, I feel like I've done something, and I've got through this day, and I've achieved like a small step, and it's better than nothing. And so in this sense, I guess the job really helps me to go further, and to also the thought that I might help someone with their life here as a refugee, for example, is also important for me. And I think that, okay, maybe this is my task now, or the idea where I belong now is to help others if I can. So this is kind of thought that it makes me do.
Maybe some people will be surprised about having suffered all that, become a refugee yourself. You throw yourself into helping others like yourself, but maybe that makes sense for people that you are helping refugees, and as a refugee yourself, do you feel that way? Do you feel that you're a refugee? What does it feel like to be displaced as well as having to deal with all that grief?
I cannot really name myself a refugee. I don't know why. And maybe I don't have these labels for me anyway, because people also ask me if I can view myself or name myself a widow. And I also can't. I don't know who I am, I'm here, and that's my life story, and this is who I am and what I do, and I do what I can, basically. So I guess, like, technically I am a refugee, but I don't feel like one.
Mm. And what are your hopes for the future now?
Well, the main hope, I guess, all people, Ukrainian people, have is the victory. This is the main hope that we all pray for. It's like the sooner we win, the less people, the less families will be hurt. And this is like the main hope for me. For me personally, I don't know really, because there are no hopes or plans for the future. I don't know if I want to stay here or come back home. It's like I miss home, I miss my friends. But on the other hand, I know that when I come home, it's no one there. My husband is not there. So it's like, then I think, okay, I can as well stay here, because it's like, it doesn't matter anymore. I don't know. There is no time.
That was going to be my next question. Do you ever think you'll return to Ukraine permanently? But it seems you're not sure about that.
Well, I wish I could, I guess. I wish that after the war ends, that there is the possibility for me to come home, because I think that when it's not over yet, and they talk all the time about escalations and how things can get worse. So I guess the main thing that I hope for is there is place for me to come home to when it's over, and my home is still there, my city is still there, my friends are still there. And in this case, I would want, of course, to go home.
And when you say your city, what do you think of as your city now? Is that not Luhansk, but necessarily, but Ivano-Frankivsk?
Yes, over the years I've thought about Ivano-Frankivsk as my home now, because I spent all those years, happy years, with my husband there, and all the happy memories, of course. But anyway, it would be amazing if I could go to Luhansk someday, because at this point, I guess, all these years, it was so difficult to imagine that I can come back there, but I would really want to.
And you still have family there in Ivano-Frankivsk?
Well, I have my husband's family back there, but my own family is also here in Germany. So
okay.
I have them, by my side.
And the dogs.
Yes.
But I know what comfort dogs can be, even though it seems kind of paltry to say that in these circumstances. Lastly, Yuliia, I don't think I should detain you anymore, because I just feel this has been very difficult, painful for you. and we're very thankful that you've taken the time and put yourself through this. But what message would you give to people, perhaps in the learning community, but perhaps whatever wider community we're talking to now, about what's happening in Ukraine and how they can help? And I should also say that you're going to be speaking at Online Educa Berlin, aren't you, this year? So people can come and see that. But what message would you give to people of the West or the Wester?
I would first of all thank all the people that support me or supported me, and all the Ukrainians, because it was really amazing how people literally opened their homes and took people they never met, or they don't even speak the same language, and help them survive. It's really amazing impact for all the Ukrainians. And I would probably want to say that please don't be afraid to learn more about this, and to talk to people, to ask people what they are living through, because you come here, you come to a safe place, but it doesn't mean that your challenges finish at this point. It's only the start. For a lot of people, the language or the job or whatever, and just be there for those people, ask them what they need, or just listen to their stories, because it's really incredible what people are doing to help, and what people are doing to survive. It's also incredible. We are trying to survive as a nation.
Well, thank you for taking the time to get that message across today. And those of us who are going to Berlin in November look forward to seeing you there in the flesh, and maybe having a glass of wine together. I'm really thankful that you've agreed to do this today, Yuliia, and it's been obviously a difficult conversation, but a very good one in many ways. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Talking to Yuliia brought home to me the price that the people of Ukraine are paying to defend their independence, more vividly even than the casualty numbers climbing rapidly as I speak. Her story tells us something about the reality of war, which starts with impressive sounding speeches full of big abstract nouns and ends in blunted life choices, missing limbs, families torn apart, homes, towns and villages obliterated. It would be doing a disservice to the memory of Viktor if I made a glib link now to the last of our thinkers in Theorists Corner, Eric Kandel, but there are resonances. Kandel's father was from the region of Ukraine Andy and I have just visited, Lviv Oblast. His mother was from an Ashkenazi Jewish family living near Ivano-Frankivsk, where Yuliia and Viktor made their home. Ukraine had a sizable Jewish population at one time, largely wiped out in the Holocaust. Kandel's parents moved to Vienna on the outbreak of the First World War, which is where they met and where Eric was born. In 1938, Austria was annexed by Nazi Germany, and the family migrated to America, which is where Eric Kandel made his mark.
Eric Richard Kandel, born 1929, is an Austrian-born American medical doctor specialising in psychiatry, a neuroscientist and a professor of biochemistry and biophysics at Columbia University. He received the 2000 Nobel Prize for his research on the physiological basis of memory storage in neurons. His work, which included experiments with giant sea slugs, centred on an explanation of the relationships between psychology and neurology, and has been foundational in the development of AI learning. Donald Clark explains why.
His finding here is that long-term storage, what we call long-term memory, involves gene activation, the creation of there's new proteins and new synaptic connections. He actually discovers this in the lab. he finds that memories are actually changes or the creation of new proteins and synaptic connections. Now, that second half is really important here, because when we come to Hebb and all these other people, they pick up on this idea. It was already known in a sense by the time Kandel comes along here, but they pick up on that idea. But it's foundational here that Kandel finds this link between experience of the world and biology and the neural structure of the brain. Learning can now be seen as experience captured as cellular change. And he does that, he discovers that. That may seem trivial, but nobody had come up with this before. Nobody had actually found out how memories were actually being stored in the brain. And then he goes on to look at the plasticity of a brain, how it might change in many ways, okay, with molecular modifications. It's quite clear to me that the brain is a material object, and that there has to be, we now know that it's a mixture of synaptic communications, a mixture of the chemical communications and the physical or the electrical communications across the brain in terms of consolidation and reconsolidation of memories.
Morning, everybody. This is a final update from Run 19. Would you believe it? John and I have had a very brief visits to Lviv, fairly routine in many respects, but absolutely vital, important work. So we're on the ferry back now. A few thank yous to say. First of all, to Oksana and the team. The wheelchairs and all the aid you put on board was very gratefully received at Lviv Hospital. Also, all the other boxes that went down to Oksana as well, they've all gone. So huge thanks to you. Big thanks to Bob and Dan up in Loughborough. Your PPE equipment, also some of that came over on this trip as well, and that's gone to Lviv Hospital as well. Finally, to the Brass Band Aid project, and in particular Gens 2 and 3, or 3 and 4, for the wonderful collection of crutches that are also now at the Lviv Hospital. Absolutely super. So it's goodbye from me and
Goodbye from me.
I was a bit shocked when I saw the video where Andy records that final message. We both look completely fucked. I'm in awe of the resilience and commitment shown by Andy and his team and what they all personally contribute. Depending on when you're listening to these words, it's probable that the next run is already underway. They're taking 2 vans and a trailer this time with a payload of 2.5 tons. They'll be visiting Kyiv, Dnipro and Zaporizhia, where, as Andy says with characteristic understatement, it's a bit lively right now. They'll also collect a couple of people to be evacuated back to the UK. In a way, I wish I was with them. In another way, I know that the most useful thing I can do as a non-driver is to sit here banging out podcast episodes about what they're doing in my very comfortable hack shack.
You've been listening to Hacking Ukraine, a multi-episode special from The Learning Hack. The series is written and produced by John Helmer with help from me, Kate Fitzgerald. All original music is by John Helmer. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Area 9 Lyceum, Andy Wooler and all at Ukraine Fundraiser 2022, as well as Uckfield Concert Brass.
Andy would like to thank everybody who's donated. Please keep those donations rolling in. And I'd like to thank Andy for use of the music we play behind our pleas for fundraising. It's Andy's own orchestral arrangement of Plyva Kacha, a traditional Ukrainian folk song about war performed by the London Shostakovich Orchestra. If you should happen to belong to an orchestra, Andy says you're free to use it. His only request being that you hold a collection for one of the organisations supporting Ukraine. It doesn't have to be Ukraine Fundraiser 2022, although that would be nice.
Since Ukraine Fundraiser 2022 formed at the start of the Russian invasion, the organisation has made more than 18 runs to Kyiv, the Donetsk region, Zaporizhia, Lviv, Dnipro and other destinations, targeting aid to those who need it most. Times may be difficult at home, but in Ukraine there are people whose lives have been totally destroyed. This effort relies on your donations, so please give what you can, no matter how small, on the Just Giving page at this link. Every penny you give will go to helping sufferers from this cruel conflict rebuild their lives.
The link for your donations is justgiving.com/crowdfunding/Ukraine Fundraiser 2022. That's justgiving.com/crowdfunding/Ukraine Fundraiser 2022.